Welcome to the Manager Matt podcast show. The show is designed to give you solutions to your day-to-day management and leadership problems. It's hosted by Matthew Haddock, a frontline manager and leader with over 25 years of experience. If you're ready, then let's get on with the show.
Welcome to the Manager Matt podcast show, a weekly show designed for you as a leader and manager to get the results you've always wanted. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the show so you can never miss an episode and share it with anyone else who might get the benefit. Right, without any more delay, let's get on with this week's show. Welcome to the Manager Matt podcast show. Hope everyone is well and delivering the results they want through the people around them. That's your team. Don't ever forget it. So today, what are we going to be talking around? Well, we're going to be talking around tough conversations. We know that we have to have tough conversations as leaders, and what we really need to be doing is being ready for those tough conversations. Now, firstly, let's think about what is a tough conversation. Well, firstly, it's part of your role. So your role will mean that you're going to be in positions where you're going to have tough conversations with people. That's just the nature of the beast. There is going to be times where people don't do what they're meant to do. That might be because they're not being trained correctly. That might be because they're not being motivated or led correctly. And of course, remember, accountability will still lie with you, whatever. But you know that you have to have those tough conversations. You need to drive results. And sometimes the conversations can be tough. And of course, you need to challenge. Now, when I say being tough and challenging, people seem to think of the negative side of that, that you're being a negative person. But you don't have to be negative. You're not trying to be insulting. You don't have to be offhand. In fact, it's the actual opposite. You really do want your people to do well. So you need to make sure that you care and you challenge the right people in the right way. So it's important to have an understanding of how to deliver the tough conversation. So when we talk about tough conversations, we need to start with, as with everything in leadership and management, the why. So why do we need those tough conversations? Well, as I said a minute ago, it could be because we're not delivering results. And as a team, you need to have the tough conversations to understand why we're not getting those results we need. And of course, tough conversation will mean that you're getting tough feedback, but we'll touch on that in a little bit. But what we're really looking at is, what is the results? Where are you trying to get them? And what's the conversations you need to have with people when you know that they're not quite hitting the mark? When you're under pressure, when a team's not functioning, there is going to be times where you have to have a tough conversation, where you need to turn around and tell people this is the reason why we're not delivering, and these are things we need to improve. And how we do that is going to be around those and how those people in your organisation deal with it. They're going to be, it's part of people's development, a tough conversation. Sometimes you want so much the best out of your people and you really want them, guys and girls, to succeed. So you need to be able to have a honest but very much frank and tough conversation to push them to be their best. We don't want talent wasted. You don't want to be a person who lets talent slip through your fingers. So you need to have those conversations. And then they can understand how they can be better, how they can be part of being better. In one-to-ones, you're definitely going to have a tough conversation because they're not always going to be unicorns and rainbows. There is going to be times when you need to be honest and have the frank and open conversation around how they or their team are not performing or not delivering, or how they're impacting negatively to the performance of the organisation. So you need to be doing that. And of course, the ongoing assessment of people when you look at their goals for the year. Now, we're getting into that time of the year, and I am going to do a podcast around goals and how to do your end-of-year reviews. But of course, it doesn't just mean you should be having it at the end of the year. There shouldn't be surprises at the end of the year. So you need to make sure that if they're not doing well and their performance isn't going well, that you're having those tough conversations in the performance reviews. And of course, sometimes things go wrong. And majority of the time, and I really do think this is around a process that's failed or a procedure, it's not the person. But there is a very, very rare time where somebody doesn't do what they needed to do. And that might be because they don't really want to be in your organisation or the role that they're in. And you as a leader have to understand that a tough conversation either can correct that person's view of what they want to do in their business, or actually encourages them to stretch to either another department, another role, or even another company. Because sometimes, because you care, you need to let them know. And sometimes the ball does get dropped, and that's part of leadership. It's never going to be plain sailing. You're never going to get a successful team all the time. You're going to have problems. And being able to have tough conversations from a place of caring is very important in what we do. So let's go into the nuts and bolts of it. How does it actually hold together? Well, when you prepare for anything, you need to make sure you prepare for a tough conversation. There's no point in wandering into a meeting and just going, well, you're a load of rubbish, you lot. Or individually, this is not how you should be doing stuff. I'm sure you wouldn't do that, but you need to be prepared. So make sure you've done your research. This is a prerequisite of going into any of these conversations, is to make sure that you've got the details that you want to deliver. But even before that, you need to make sure that you've built trust. So that means that the team understand where you're coming from when this feedback arrives. I had leaders who were genuinely nice people for many years, worked with them, and then you'd have one time where they'd just go completely off on it about a subject, either about not delivering or a cost or a project that hadn't worked, and really out of the blue, a real kind of a sucker punch. It kind of made you look at each other and go, what's going on? What's this guy going on about? And that's because you'd built trust and you expected a certain thing to come for this person, and then they delivered something different. So you need to know your team, and that's obviously built through one-to-ones, and of course feedback, which can be part of tough conversations, but feedback is a regular, ongoing thing. It's not a one-off. You need to understand the person behind the role, so you need to build the trust to understand that person, what makes them tick, what they're good at delivering, before you get to the tough conversation. And then let's look at how you plan a tough conversation. Don't do it in a corridor, don't do it in a rest area. Do it where you've got it planned. So you need to know the place. Is it somewhere that's going to be quite informal so that the person's at ease? I would not do it at their desk or at their cubicle. You can do it in your room. There's no doubt, remember you're the leader of this person or this individual. So make sure you're doing it around a place that's easy for people to see and get to. Another thing to consider, what about the time of the day? I know it sounds a bit strange and maybe something you haven't thought about, but the time of the day can make a difference. If you do it too early, have they got a load of things on? If you do it at near dinner, are the minds focused and the body sugar levels low? So when you're doing these tough conversations, of course it's from, as I said, a place of wanting to improve. Do you look at how you do it in a way that is around a time that suits both parties? And of course, when you're looking at the preparation, you need to plan the message. What are you actually going to say? So what are you going to build on? What facts have you got? And remember, work on facts, not just feelings, because we're looking at behaviours over attitudes. Attitudes are very, very hard for people to be sort of subjective about. So make sure you're building the facts around these tough conversations that you need, and then look at what is the actual message you're trying to get over, and practice it. Practice if it's a really serious conversation. Get it practiced, get it nailed down. You don't need to video yourself or record yourself, I wouldn't have thought, but practice a few of the things that you're going to try and say. Put some bullet points on a sheet so you've definitely got it. And make sure you pressure test the message. So don't ever do it through anger. It's never, ever good to give feedback or a tough conversation when you're angry. So make sure that you have time to digest what you try to say. Even test it out with someone who's on your peer to see if it's in the right place. And what are the outcomes that you want? You want to start with that why, as I've said, but understand if you're having this tough conversation, what do you want it to change? It isn't just going, well, just get better. You've got to be very much around the data. If you're giving it to a sales team, look, guys, this is really important. We need to be improving our sales. Currently, we're 20% behind where we should be. There's a real need for us to up us game here. And I'm looking at individual figures and I just don't see we're getting to where we need to be getting to. So let's see what we can do. I'll be there to help you. Remember, this is about a tough conversation, but it's not a conversation that just goes, you're bad, I'm good. It's a conversation you want to build on. So let's move from the prep into the conversation itself. Be ready for their reactions. They could be negative. If you've built a good relationship with your team and understand where you're coming from, but make sure that when you're delivering this message, as a tough conversation, you're going to maybe get you will get some pushback. People can get easily offended around things. They may feel that they're the best at whatever they do. So when you've come with this, you're going to be getting maybe a negative pushback. So make sure that if that does happen, you can step back away from it for a second, leave some space, and be happy with silence. Have a time where you just don't say anything, let it settle, and they will fill that space normally and start to reflect. And there will be heightened emotions, so be aware of that. There's something that you need to be doing in this situation is making sure that you are calm. As I've said, no anger. You should be doing this with a smile, not a crazy smile like the Joker from Batman, but a smile that says, I'm in control, I understand the message, I know this is the right thing to do. So make sure that you do that when you're giving these tough conversations. And of course, always come from a place of calm. So you're making sure that you're using this as a tool to improve that person. So you are definitely making sure that you're saying this is around challenging you. It's about improving us as a team and our performance. But it's also saying that we care as a person and I want you to be better. So that's part of this message you're doing. As I've said before, it's a gift. Like feedback, it's a gift. So you want to see improvements. You're not doing this tough conversation unless it is just caveat that, unless it's a tough conversation when you are having to do something which is very radical, which may be finishing a person through a disciplinary procedure. That is a tough conversation, but there's a process for that, and we're not going to go into that today. This is around improvements. This is around what you want the team to improve. So, they might not like the gift of feedback and this tough conversation, but maybe that's because it's been wrapped in the wrong wrapper in the past. This is around, you're being a big believer in giving them the real information they need. And when it's tough conversations, I'm not a massive fan of the feedback sandwich you'll have all heard where you say something good, then you give the negative feedback in the middle, then something good at the end. Not a big believer in that. I feel that it's, you should really be telling the person the facts that they need to know. You've built a relationship. And you're not there to give that person a bollocking or tell them off. It's around a tough conversation that they need to hear to improve. And remember, you've got your performance and your own career on their performance because you're performing using others. So you've got to make sure that you're doing this for the right reasons. At the end of this conversation, make sure you're leaving with some actions. When is it going to change? What is going to change? When are we going to have a feedback around this? So that you can get that in their head that this is not just a quick flash in the pan and then walk away. If it's around financials, so we missed his sales target, that means we're behind on his revenue. What I want to see is a 10% improvement in revenue by the end of the next quarter. I need to see you getting more leads. I need this to happen. Definitely fact-based, and that would help that conversation leave on a edge of, this is a tough conversation, it's around the right things for us and the business and you, but these are things that we can do. Here's what I'm going to help you with, but here's what I expect you to do, because this is really your area that you need to improve. That's fair enough. After the tough conversation, you need to follow up. You need to be going and making sure that you continue as normal. As I said, it's an emotional thing, tough conversations, hopefully built on the back of trust and respect, but it could feel awkward. Don't let it feel awkward. Carry on as normal. Get around it. Don't avoid each other. Carry on as if it's normal. And remember, you're doing it for the right reasons, so there's no reason why you just can't carry on as normal. They might struggle with that. You might get a bit of a quiet situation, somebody can blank in you. That's their choice. You've done what you need to do, and you are the leader at the end of the day. You are there to deliver, and that's the way it goes. So, continue as normal. Send out some notes, so you build on the points that you've made and the points you want them to improve. Give them some time to digest it, but also give them some time and actions. It's theirs to do, not yours, but make sure that you're sending out something with a set of timed and practical areas that you want to see improvement. And then arrange a follow-up. You are going to be doing your regular one-to-ones. You are going to be doing your normal day-to-day stuff. As I said, normality continues. But it's good to arrange a specific follow-up around, especially because you're saying a certain tough message to them. Get a follow-up in the diary. Give them time, but make sure you get a follow-up in so it just doesn't fade away. Worst thing a manager can do is say, well, this is what we need to do, this is what we're going to do, and then don't follow it up and forget, and it falls off the radar. And the person next time this happens just thinks, well, he'll just forget about it anyway. Pretty pointless doing it. And of course, offer support. make sure that you're making sure that you're building and getting support in there. So it's not just them. It is them to do, as I've said, but you want to make sure they've got a network around them. And if they do genuinely bring, after the tough conversation or within the tough conversation, a real reason, not a reason just to deflect from theirs, but a real reason, then you need to go away, consider, is there something I need to do? Could I build differently? Should I look at unblocking that path for them somehow? So it's worth having a look at that. So that's it. So making sure you follow up. So let's just recap what we've been talking around. Tough conversations are the right thing to do because you're doing it from a position of care. You want to see improvements. You want to see the team doing well. You need to deliver results. And obviously your career and your role relies on them doing it. It can be done in a number of areas. It can be done as part of a development plan. It can be done when we're not delivering. It can be done as a one-to-one. It can be done in the performance. Make sure you do the preparation. So make sure you know your data. Always have a plan. Make sure the message is clear and starts with the why. So you're making sure you're doing that. Understand the person behind that role. So it's not just around the role, it's around the person. Understand them. And that's where you need to build trust. In the conversation, make sure that you're calm. Be prepared for negativity. Prepared for a deflection. Make sure that you take that on board. Feedback's a gift. They might not like the wrapping, but it's a gift. Leave with some actions for them, not for you. From actions for them. Remember, you're not taking these monkeys on. And then after the tough conversation, continue as a follow-up as business as normal. Make sure you're sending out some notes on this with actions and making sure that you follow it up and offer support. Well, that is my thoughts on tough conversations. If you've had a thought on tough conversations or anything else, remember, you can leave me some feedback or anything else you want, as feedback is a gift. Remember to email it to managermattpodcast@gmail.com. Love to engage in new and old topics. And I have had some questions in which I am going to tackle in a future podcast. But anyway, that's it for Manager Matt this week. Thanks for listening and goodbye.
Thank you so much for listening to this Manager Matt podcast. We hope you found it interesting, helpful and actionable. One last thing, please leave a quick review on iTunes or with your podcast provider, as it helps to spread the word of Manager Matt. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the podcast, and if you did like anything in particular, send an email to managermattpodcast@gmail.com or visit managermatt.co.uk for more content. Feedback is a gift, so let's keep giving. See you next week.